30 years. She is a past vice president of the Newark Teachers Union. Prior to her retirement in July 2010, Antoinette was the coordinator at the Newark Public Schools Mary A. Boldin Student Center, where she developed a core of after-school classes and university partnerships for Newark's high school students. In 2011, Antoinette was elected to the Newark Board of Education. She was twice elected by her colleagues to serve as board president. Under Antoinette's leadership, Education Commissioner Cerf agreed to return Newark State-controlled school board back to local control and the area of fiscal management. On that, I'll also note that he's stepping down. Just putting that out there. Commissioner Cerf is stepping down. I don't know if Newark had anything to do with that, but it's acknowledged right now. Antoinette is currently the project director for Stand and Deliver, a public speaking and leadership program which serves over 500 youth at 27 sites. I give you Ms. Antoinette Baskerville-Richardson.
My mic to work. There you go. Okay. All right. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you, Tai, for that introduction. And I am very proud to have been a part of the process that developed Councilmember Baraka's blueprint on education. And what I would like to, first of all, my name is Antoinette Baskerville-Richardson. As Ms. Cooper said, I am presently the president of the Newark Board of Education. But I come here today, I'm going to speak briefly. I'd like to just give a historical perspective and a political perspective on the importance of the presentation by Councilman Baraka of this particular blueprint at this particular time in history. And as I look out, I see, along with many young faces that I'm very happy to see involved, I see folks who have been around for a while and who will remember some of the things that I'm going to quickly mention. I bring a particular, I think, kind of unique perspective. I went to Newark Public Schools in elementary school. I remember my parents actually fighting for the integration of schools in the week-wake section. As a high school student in Newark, I witnessed, after the rebellion in Newark, I witnessed the mass exodus of the Jewish population from that neighborhood. And I, of course, remained in the school, and I saw the difficulties that the school system had in making the necessary adjustments to teach the students who were there in the school. Later on, as a teacher, I worked at Barringer High School, and within a 10-year period, I saw the transformation of the population at Barringer High School from Italian majority to African American majority to Latino majority. And again, it's basically bearing witness to the fact that the school system had a very difficult time addressing and dealing with the needed changes for each change in the school population. In 2011, as was stated, after 36 years in the district, I was elected to the board, to the school board. And in the 3 years that I have sat on the board, it has become clearer than ever to me that the academic, social, and civic development of our children is inextricably tied to the ability of school and community to work together. Just a little history. Now, it has been for the last over 30 years that our children's high school graduation is tied to the results on one test. This began in the 1980s with a test called the Minimum Basic Skills Test. And there's a history, I won't go through all of the data, but there's a history to that. That every time the students did well enough on the test so that it would really look like a good number of our students were reaching the benchmark, then a tougher test was developed and creating more and more students who were unable to pass the test. And this has basically been the trend that our students and now our teachers' futures are based on the results of one test. This has helped no one except the testing industry. What has not happened during the years of the state takeover is that the state has done nothing to help the Newark Public Schools District developed the capacity for local control. And I would give all due credit to the members of the 9 members of the Newark Board of Education who, and you cannot see it, but who work selflessly on committees, who work selflessly doing the work of the board, and who I believe have demonstrated, particularly in this last year, that they are fully able and capable to run this district and to take on local control and control our own destiny. I would divide the period of state takeover into basically 3 periods. The first period was the takeover itself, which was a very hostile takeover. I call it the Beverly Hall era, characterized by fear, shock, and disorientation. There was resistance at that time, but not enough. The second period, approximately from 1999 to 2008, I call that the carrot. That's the Marilyn Boldin period. During that period, we had a superintendent who was one of us, who was from the community. We actually almost forgot that we were under state takeover, because she basically, no matter whether we agreed with everything she did or not, we knew that her heart was with the community and the children. And then, as a matter of fact, when there was an attempt to remove her, we rallied as if we had chosen her. But we were kind of lulled about the state takeover issue at that point. And period 3, that I believe we are in now, I call the period of destruction. This was the stick. The next superintendent, Dr. Janey, who transitioned in and out very quickly, and now we have Superintendent Anderson, and we have the political situation that we are in now, which Dr. Janey actually set everything in place for the coming of Cammie Anderson. And under Cammie Anderson, her period of reign is characterized by closing of schools, decreased school budgets, manipulation of parents, attempted manipulation of parents, and demonizing of those who do not agree with her. It's further characterized by hiring of high-level, very young administrators at 6-figure salaries, all of whom come from other places and who are not transferred, who are not promoted within the district. So, what we do not believe that Newark is still under state control because our QSAC scores weren't good enough, or because of the inability of the Newark School Board to govern. We believe that the key issue is a $1 billion budget. That's right. A budget which is almost twice that of the municipal council. We believe that the issue is contracts, that it always has been. So local control is our clarion cry, because the condition of state control allows the governor, not the local school board, to choose, evaluate, and retain the state district superintendent. Above and beyond everything else, this is the key factor. This is the major difference between a state controlled district and a locally controlled district. The state-controlled district allows the dismantling of traditional public schools, the forced co-location, and illogically matched program. And it allows aggressive changes to be made, to be forced upon children and families. The importance of Councilman Baraka's blueprint for education is magnified by the current political struggle for a comprehensive and inclusive model that respects teacher, parent, and student input and is based on successful models and creative community innovation. This is the first comprehensive attempt to incorporate and input the influence of the office of mayor in a transparent, holistic, inclusive process that integrates the needs for academic achievement into the fabric and formula of success for the city. It's necessary that we move into this period of comprehensive planning and conscious implementation. And Councilman Baraka's blueprint will pave the way for that. Thank you.
Dr. Lauren Wells speak, I'm going to give a quick bio. Dr. Lauren Wells holds a PhD in education from the University of California, Los Angeles, a master's degree in educational leadership from Columbia University, and a BA in English from Temple University. Dr. Wells began her work in education as an English teacher. Altogether, she has 15 years of experience in educational program design and implementation, educational policy analysis, strategic planning, community partnerships, and organizing, and grant writing. Her research and practice centers on the intersections of structural inequality, policy, community engagement, and opportunity. Dr. Wells came to Newark in 2006 as the project coordinator of a statewide education policy coalition called the New Jersey Education Organizing Coalition. In 2009, Dr. Wells became the director of the broader, bolder approach to education at the Metropolitan Center for Urban Education at New York University. From 2009 to 2012, Dr. Wells led the design and implementation of a major school reform initiative in Newark called the Newark Global Village School Zone. Dr. Wells believes the single most important thing she can do with her experience is give them back to the communities that gave them to her. And Dr. Wells played such an integral role in helping us to get this policy together, so thank you so much for the work that you did. Dr. Wells.
You mind if I stick this over here?
Thank you, Tai, for that wonderful introduction. It is really exciting to be in this room presenting this plan to you all, sitting next to Councilman Baraka, who is our next mayor. Okay. And just tell you that for me, this is the culmination of a number of years working in partnership with Mr. Baraka and many people who are in this room, working in schools throughout the city, and really working to create a process and a vision and a set of expectations and outcomes for our children and our communities that are organized around the principles of high expectations, democracy, inclusiveness, best practices, and really rolling your hands up and doing it together. If we don't work with our schools and our communities together, then there is no future for our children or our city. Right. And I think that that's a fundamental piece of this plan. I appreciate President Baskerville-Richardson's, Tony's history on the stages of reform in the city, because there are stages that parallel what is happening here that have happened throughout this country for the last 30 years, right? Newark is not the first. There's been Chicago, there's been New York, there's been Philadelphia, there's been Los Angeles, there's been DC, and the attempt has really been to take our schools and to isolate them from the community and to take the resources that have been a part of supporting our schools and supporting our community and reduce them to nothing so that we don't have the capacity to work together or the resources to do that. And so this plan really is an attempt to move us back in a direction where the resources, the assets, the institutions, the people, the strategies are all working together for collective uplift. And yes, I have to, bring Du Bois into the room whenever I talk, because uplift is really what education and community participation is all about. So just saying all of that, I want to start by, in the flat world of education, how America's commitment to equity will determine our future. Linda Darling-Hammond lays out, as do many other researchers across the country, some key things that are essential to creating excellent schools. Secure housing, healthcare, food, so that children show up to school every day ready to learn. Supportive early learning environments. Equitably funded schools. Well-prepared and well-supported teachers. Standards, curriculum, and assessment focused on 21st century learning. Schools organized for in-depth student and teacher learning. These are practices that are built on years of research, right, that far extend beyond my 15 years in education experience. There are people who have been doing this and doing this and doing this, and who have shown us consistently what it takes to create great schools for all children. So when we think about moving forward and thinking about how you do this, despite the fact that we know poverty affects our children. That's not a surprise. We know that it affects how they show up at school in the morning, whether or not they're prepared for kindergarten. We know that there are word gaps and language gaps. We know that there are experiential gaps that our children often have. But these practices have been proven to yield the kind of outcomes that any parent, regardless of where they live, would want for their children. And so when we talk about poverty, right, a lot of times people will say, oh, that's the no, you have your no excuses team, right? People will say, oh, you're just using poverty as an excuse not to change schools. Well, I actually believe that because we know so much about how poverty affects children in school, it makes us our responsibility to do something about it and to organize our schools and our resources around schools to mitigate the impact that poverty has when children show up. It is not an excuse. It is a reality. We live in a society that is highly stratified and highly organized to create different outcomes for different people. And we know this. And so if we really want to create schools that are good for everybody, then we get in them and we do the business of organizing them so they address what our children come into the building with. We don't push that to the side. We don't pull schools out of communities and bring in institutions that don't know anything about the community or the schools are or where the children live. We go to the people who have the information on what the issues are and have had success in addressing those issues, and we work with them and we make our schools better, we make our teachers prepared by giving them experiences in the community and relationships with the community so that they know how to respond to our children in the classroom. We don't ignore that. We don't ignore poverty. We address poverty. We look it in the face and we say, it is not going to be the reason that we don't fulfill our responsibility to our children. Poverty gives us a responsibility to do something about it. Just a little, we know that schools exist in different neighborhoods, right? And neighborhoods exist in a city. A city is like a living system. There are arteries, there are veins, there's a kidney, there's a heart, there's some lungs. And if one of those things isn't working properly, then your system isn't working properly, right? And we all know what happens if your system isn't working properly. You go see a doctor, and the doctor figures out how to make the part that's not working work properly so that you can be a healthy individual. That is how we should address our schools and our city. We should understand that it is one part of an entire system that has to be working in coordination and collaboration with every other part of the system, and that we should be strategic about how to address problems when they arise. We cannot pull the schools out and say, the school exists here. It has no relationship to the rest of the city. All of the institutions, all of the resources, all of the individuals have to be working together in a functioning, healthful way to make the city, as a living system, a healthy system, right? We know this when people go and do ecology studies in water and all that kind of stuff. They really try to figure out, why does the little frog die? And they do the work to figure that out, and then the little frogs all come back to life. So the extent to which we do this, and the extent to which the institutions and resources and assets are coordinated strategically to address needs while stimulating advancement, right? We know we have problems right now, but we have to have a big enough vision to know that we're not always going to be having problems and plan for that vision at the same time that we address the problems that we currently have. So we have to be working on a twofold track all of the time. These are the needs. This is what we have to do right now to build a city full of residents who in 5, 10, 15 years will be a different city full of different residents who have been empowered and given the resources that they need to live their lives fully and to contribute to society. So you have your preventative plan, right? And you have that plan that when you see the problem, you get in there, you diagnose it, and you treat it so that you get people well, so that when the whole system is well, everybody is well together. So lifting up schools requires lifting up and bringing resources together. This means strengthening the institutions and the resources that are in neighborhoods, right? You can't just let community organizations die. Right. They matter to neighborhoods. So when we talk about comprehensively coming together, we talk about supporting the institutions that are in neighborhoods where families are, where children are, where schools are, where libraries are, where parks are, where everything is, so that we can build healthy neighborhoods, and healthy children. Research out of Chicago from the Chicago Schools Research Consortium shows clearly that when you have schools that are in neighborhoods where the neighborhood resources haven't been invested in, the schools don't improve, and they don't improve as quickly. So we know that this social capital, as they call it, these relational things that exist around schools, matter outside of school to children, but they also matter to how children come to school, and they can play an important part in how schools can push back out into communities. It's a three-way relationship. We build the institutions so they can partner with schools and support what happens inside of schools, and we build the capacity inside of schools so that schools can become a part of communities, so that they understand what is going on in communities, and they can work with communities outside of schools in the way that I know many of us traditionally have experienced. When I was a kid, you know, my teachers were neighbors, we had events in the community that were school promoted and school driven, and those are a really important part of civic life and of community life. So what I'm saying, this means, and I'm saying a lot and I'm really excited again. This means that we're weaving together the city's resources in a tapestry that works in a coordinated way, right? So no more isolation, no more departments that don't speak to each other, that don't have some common goals and some common direction around children and families, but there really is a comprehensive plan that wraps around the city that is about how do we understand that in this period of time where resources have changed, funding has changed, you know, we don't have the same programs that existed in the 1980s or the 1990s. So we have to figure out how we bring our assets to the table and make them work in the best interest of the children and the community and the city overall. Right. As a part of the Global Village Zone, this is what we were doing. And for me, and I won't speak for Principal Baraka, but there were 7 schools that were involved in this initiative. There were 7 schools, there were 7 principals, there were hundreds of teachers, there were a number of CBOs, there were elected officials, there were parents. We went through a process of engaging everyone to think about how do you organize schools and how do you organize what happens inside of schools and how do you organize what happens around schools so that they are supportive of each other. We did things like begin to extend the day for children, and not just extend it by bringing in outside partners, but by working inside the school, having the teachers work together to plan and create and put new classes and new programs in school buildings. Mr. Baraka, I'm sure we'll talk a little bit about his experience at Central High School. We had parent events. We had parent empowerment days where we brought resources to the school for parents that would help them everything from supporting early reading in children to managing difficult teenagers to financial literacy. These are the things that a school that's part of a community does for the residents and the children that live there. We worked on coordinating the systems across schools around instruction and on ensuring that teachers were beginning to have some understanding of culturally relevant practices